Is it recording?
ABR.
Three,
I'll always
two,
be. Wait.
1. Hello and welcome to Overthink This podcast. I am Macy Myers.
And I am Kyle.
And we are back. We took a week off.
We took a week off.
Small hiatus.
Yeah. We needed some time to hang out.
We just didn't want to do it last weekend. It's Mental Health Day.
So sue us. You know.
Or
whatever.
don't.
And I actually don't sue us for having money. And then I actually did a little bit of work on the studio. Not much.
Oh, what did... Oh, okay.
Moved the sound things, the sound baffles.
They have a name. The foam.
The foam, basically. All right, well, I guess we, with no further ado, is that how you say it?
Without further ado.
Without further ado. I guess
What is ado?
I don't know. Like it's just an old ass English word. Could be French. Sounds French.
All right, let's get into it.
So it's my turn this week. Now, I've got a story for you. Something of a mystery. It is of Eastern Flight 980.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
So plane that went missing. I don't know if I know about this one though.
It's weird. There's articles about it, and back when this happened, it was a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's odd that it did sort of float away.
Well, same with the missing Malaysian flight, but I think because they kind of just figured out what happened, sort of, they just came to the conclusion that it was a suicide.
So this is sort of the same. Well, it's a plane crash where they didn't know what happened and they had a lot less technology to figure it out.
Right.
So it took a considerable amount of manpower that I will get into.
Okay.
So on January 1st, 1985, the mostly empty Boeing 727 Eastern Airlines Flight 980 was headed from Asunción, Paraguay to Miami with stopovers in Bolivia and Ecuador. Their first stop was landing in La Paz. Landing in La Paz is always difficult for pilots to navigate for many reasons. El Alto International Airport was at the altitude of 13,325 feet, which makes it the world's highest international airport in the world. The air is so thin that planes land at 200 miles an hour because if they go any slower at the typical 140 miles an hour, they'll just fall out of the sky.
Weird.
Yeah, so they have to go faster. Because they'll just fall straight down and crash.
No thanks.
Yeah, seems sketchy just with that.
Just go somewhere else.
Also, the air brakes don't work very well. So
There's air brakes? What, the flaps that come up?
Yeah.
Okay.
So those don't work well, obviously. So the runway is twice the normal length of a regular runway. So they have
more time to slow down.
Tons of space to slow down. And upon landing, passengers would have felt the effects of altitude and as the cabin depressurized or whatever. So once they literally hit the ground and the pressure is released, they would feel increased heart rates, deeper breaths, fuzzy
is that
thoughts.
Bad for you?
Well, when you are in
such an extreme change, because usually you gradually gain altitude. But yeah, that right away would,
so you're
for
just
me, I would
thrown into it.
For me, I would probably be barfing.
I mean, I'm sure people have, for sure. I mean, it makes you really
Where's
sick.
the barf bag?
You're barfing everywhere. Gross. Freaking everybody out.
Altitude makes me, nauseous sick.
Yeah, weird. It can make me feel... I don't think I get... No, I've gotten pretty dizzy pretty high up.
Yeah, I think it's that, headache and lightheadedness makes me nauseous.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
I just said very headache. That's me. So now we're getting into what the plane coming in. So the last word from the jet was at 8:38 p.m. Eastern time.
When
was coming
in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
According to the ground controllers, the flight was about 30 miles from the airport and cruising on track at roughly 20,000 feet. So 6 and some change thousand feet above. It was cleared to descend to 18,000 feet when it plowed straight into the Illimani Mountain.
Was it cloudy?
It was thought that the plane had so once it hit, it was thought that the plane had cartwheeled forward, the fuselage bursting and splattering across the mountain like a dry snowball hitting a tree. Nearby villagers said it shook the entire valley. The airport's radio registered only a single click. And they were all dead. Imagine, think about that, like a snowball smacking a tree and just disintegrating.
At least it was quick.
Yeah. So a little bit about this crash site, the mountain. The crash site becomes a big player in this accident and subsequent recovery attempts. Mount Illimani is a 21,122 foot mass of rocks and glaciers rising from the eastern edge of Bolivia's Altiplano region and towers over La Paz. The Andean mountain is so textured by ridgelines, high peaks, and shadows that when viewed from the city, it seems to move and change shape throughout the day. So it's just a rocky glacier mountain.
Why would this be like the stopover point?
Drop people off. I think it was just a connector.
Okay.
Yeah, it didn't get into why they stopped there. Well, there's theories of why they stopped there, but
that was just part of the airplane's route that you bought a ticket for, and it's stopping. This is the layover
stopping in Bolivia, and then it was Bolivia and Ecuador, then Miami.
Okay.
The rest. So I'm gonna get into the rescue attempts. So there's quite a few. There's some that are I'm gonna go through kind of quickly because there's like two. I think it's like two that I really want to dig into.
Were there any survivors?
Quit jumping ahead, Myers.
Sorry. I mean, because you said rescue attempts, so I guess they don't know.
Recovery attempts, rescue attempts.
But I guess
they don't know what they're doing.
How bad the damage is until they get there, right?
Sure.
Okay.
So they're just trying to figure out what the hell happened. First attempt. It took the Bolivian Air Force a full day to locate the wreckage, but once they did, they mobilized a team that subsequently got pinned down by a storm that dropped several feet of snow, and they turned back. So they started their way up the mountain. This is, remember, at the mountain's 21.
It's January, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So, it's December 1st or 2nd at this point.
Okay.
So, it's freezing cold. The plane crashed at like 19-ish thousand. Like, they don't know, but it's somewhere in that range. This first attempt, they went up and couldn't get there. Got pinned down. Turned back. So, second attempt. So the second attempt was a group of representatives from the U.S. Embassy in La Paz and those from the National Transportation Safety Board, so the NTSB. I'm just going to call them that from now on. And the Airline Pilots Association. The two organizations responsible... So those are the two organizations responsible for investigating crashes by U.S. airlines. But none of them... Sorry.
This was a U.S. airline?
Yes. Eastern Airlines is out of Miami.
Okay, because I've never heard of Eastern Airlines, so it's not a thing anymore because of this? Is this like what put them out of business?
Quit jumping ahead,
okay,
Myers.
Sorry. Because usually when a plane goes down, it's like...
It's not good.
It's bad PR.
Not good. No, and we'll get to that, but that... You'll see that it's kind of funny what happened. Not funny, but it's interesting. So... They all flew in to go up to this mountain, but the none of them were acclimatized.
Acclimated?
Acclimatized.
Is that actually the word?
That's the word. Enough to do any climbing. So they got there, but they couldn't do anything, so they just sat around for a while. So because it's a huge shock to the system. The agencies asked to borrow a high altitude helicopter from Peru, but Bolivia wouldn't. So they were going to take a helicopter up and just drop in and down to instead of climbing up. But the Bolivian government blocked it. Because, and I quote, the Bolivian government did not want the world to know that the Peruvians had a better helicopter than they did.
Oh my god.
Like, what are you doing? So that was that squashed. So this is 2.5 attempts, so it's based on this same scenario.
Like, how many days has it been at this point?
It's been not many. Okay. So this is pretty early on. So the 2.5 attempt was when a Sikorsky aircraft shipped an experimental high-altitude helicopter to Bolivia that could drop Leopard off at the crash site. But the mechanics sent to reassemble the aircraft were so altitude sick upon landing in La Paz that several days had passed before they could do any work. When they did get it flying, bad weather at the summit kept everyone in the chopper so that no one could go. So we're weeks.
And the altitude is that bad?
Yeah,
I guess I don't really... Okay, the highest altitude I think I've ever been at was Pikes Peak in Colorado, and I think that's 12,000 feet. And just being in Colorado, I was like so sick that whole time. And then especially going up there, I was like laying down on a bench at the top while everybody was like gift shopping and looking at the stuff. And I was just like, don't talk to me.
That's why they chew the coca leaves too. It's supposed to help with the...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So now I understand that these people like physically can't do anything.
Yeah.
Because that's how it affects me.
Yeah. I guess it affects anybody who's not used to it. I mean, that's...
we're at sea level.
Well, here we are, yeah. The third attempt. So, this is one of the bigger ones. An official Bolivian NTSB investigation finally went up in October 1985. So now we're in October, and this happened in December.
Ooh, we're months
now
away.
We're months.
So they just gave up on the first two, and then until October, they were like, okay, let's try again.
Yeah, until the weather cleared, I'm assuming, because there's no other reason to wait. There's a lot of bureaucracy going on, too.
Okay.
They were a well-fit crew of 7 men. They had 3 days to prepare. So when they got the A-OK, they had 3 days to prepare everything on a shoestring budget. They had $600 total from the Bolivian government, and if they needed anything else, they were forced to pay out of pocket. So if they needed anything, it was either in that $600 budget, you already had it, or you bought it on your own dime.
So you're kind of just like, well, what's the point?
Yeah, kind of. But these guys were like, okay, like we're game. Let's get it going. So. Not only that, they were forced to bring their own gear, their own food. Nothing was going to be guaranteed by the Bolivian government, so they had to bring a lot of their own food and everything. So on the first day of climbing, they hiked to 17,000 feet, only to realize that none of their gear had been transported by the Bolivian Red Cross, and instead it had gone to their second base camp at 19,000 feet.
Oh. Did they just have to keep going?
So what they did, they were forced to wait in the cold, so they radioed, and they just sat there in the freezing cold while the Red Cross came down to the first base camp with 2 tents, but no stoves or gas to cook any food. So the crew just melted snow and soaked the noodles they brought to eat. So it was just like, they had nothing. 2 tents for 7 men. 7 full-grown men.
Dang.
Yeah, which is just horrible. So after all that, they had climbed up to 19,000 feet, so I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit. They had climbed up to 19,000 feet, but the altitude got to 4 of the crew. So all of them, so 3 of them were the only capable men that were able to like dig around the wreckage, uncover things, move snow around.
At least they got there, though.
Yeah, the other 4 had to go back down to the first base camp to, like, I think they all had pulmonary edema.
Oh, that happens at... Dang.
Yeah,
so... That happens at that level?
Yeah, so, or, like, beginning stages, at least. And so they had to go back down because they were just weak. And
You're gonna die.
Yeah, they're weak and sick, and it's bad. So when they were digging around or whatever, they found little to no evidence of blood or a black box or really anything that's going to say like there's blood,
no bones,
there's bodies, but you know, they were trying to figure out what happened, but it was such a mess up there that nothing could really be determined. They couldn't find really anything. A lot of it was covered in the snow. Everything was scattered. The black box was somewhere. They don't even know. It was just strewn about this like hillside, basically, or mountainside. The 4 men that went back to Base Camp 1 to recover from their pulmonary edema had requested more supplies from the Red Cross while they recovered. So they went down there like, hey, we need some stuff. We're pretty sick. But when the Red Cross showed up, they only received 2 jugs of Kool-Aid.
What?
And some clothes. No, dog. That's not what I need.
Well, we got some Kool-Aid. Somebody donated this. You want some?
Are you nuts? It wasn't even liquid Kool-Aid. It was powder.
What the heck?
Yeah, like...
Take it away.
My dude, we don't even have cups.
What about, I don't have water.
What am I supposed to do? So dumb. And then from there, sorry, something in my eye. From there, the NTSB, which is the National Transportation, they never officially sent a NTSB sponsored crew back up. That was sponsored. $600, 7 men.
Well, at that point, like, why even bother if you're not going to help?
Yeah, so the guy who led that charge was so those guys were mountaineers. Like, they were the dudes, but they just didn't get any backing.
Because what was the plan? Like, if they were going to go up there and then look and then what? Tell you what they saw? Yeah, it's a plane wreck.
Yeah, kind of. They were just going to go up there and say, like...
Yeah, no one's alive because it's October of next year.
Yeah, clearly no one's alive. And I think at this point, they get that. But I think what they wanted to do is find out what happened. So their main goal was to find the black box or the cockpit recorder. There's like a pilot cockpit voice recorder that records what happens in there. And it's kind of like the black box. It's just up front.
Okay.
So their main goal is just to figure out, survey whatever you could and figure out what happened, get the black box, bring it back, and figure out the details. So it kind of dies, the whole thing after that. Like I said, the NTSB never really sponsored anybody to go back up. The Bolivian government wasn't giving any money. It was falling apart. The airlines never really recovered from this, like you said earlier, but that's not really... There's a few theories of why it failed, and there's a few theories of why no one cared about really finding out what happened. So I'm going to briefly talk about like the Eastern Airlines. This is the 80s. This is Miami. So they're saying soon after Flight 980's crash, a bunch of articles would surface that the airlines had long been a courier for the cartel's energy powder. I thought that was funny.
Energy powder.
Cocaine. Into the U.S. So clearly you're flying from South America to Miami and just trucking it in. Mm-hmm. From 1980, so it said from 1984 to 1989, it's thought that the airlines had smuggled in about 2,723 pounds of cocaine. Oh my god! And 800
just bloat it up.
Yeah, and 826 pounds of marijuana. This is about, at the time, 25% of all drugs coming into the U.S. at that time. Through one airline.
Yeah.
And so that owner must have, if that's the case, that owner was getting kickbacks, and he was just trucking it in. They were saying like they would put it on a luggage cart, and as the people are loading luggage, they would just throw it in without checking anything. It would just show up. And so they'd throw it into the plane.
It's like before TSA screenings and anything anyway. Just walk up to the plane and get on.
Yeah. And a lot of the workers had an idea, but they didn't really. They just kind of
like
hands off.
Office gossip, like, there's drugs on this plane.
I wonder if it was one of those things that was just widely known and you just kind of were like...
But you just don't really talk about it. You're like, well, I'm just working. It's my job. I'm getting paid.
Also, who knows, maybe they were getting subsidies,
keep quiet
themselves. Yeah, just like, hey, throw these in there too. And so not only the drugs, I didn't get the actual amount, but buttloads of money were coming in too. Like just money back and forth. So like
they're
drugs
probably,
would come,
laundering it
money,
through the airline and stuff.
Bingo. So money was coming in while drugs were going. So money was coming into South America while drugs were going out. Then money would come back to launder through the airlines and
selling like fake seats.
Yeah, so it would legitimize the money that was coming in for the cartels, and then it could be used, you know, to invest wherever else you wanted in Miami. So at this time, Miami's really corrupt.
Seems like if you're gonna run a drug cartel laundering business, the easiest way would be through the airline.
Oh, for sure. Because who's
in charge
checking?
Of like what's going on to your plane? You're like, put drugs on there.
Yeah, if you own the airlines, who's really checking? If you don't put that process in place, no one's gonna look.
Which I'm sure today, though, they have like federal agents who are like,
I think today is a bit different.
Just because you're a private business, we're still regulating.
Yeah.
You're going to international airspace.
It's still a
But TSA screening still sucks.
It's a
They're
federal
still
crime.
Really bad at it. But like the TSA screening, they're like 90% of the stuff gets through when they do studies or they'll like plant things to make sure that the agents are on it. And they fail like all the time.
I have a little theory about Eastern Airlines myself, so I don't think it was in airlines for very long. I think the cartel started it as a cover-up
specifically
for this. Yes, exactly. Like do a passenger airlines from here to back and forth to South America, and we'll
poor people who are actually just flying on it because they're like, I'm going to Miami.
Yeah, they're like, I'm going to visit family or whatever. But all of a sudden, there's drugs below, and if you know that, then it's like, is this thing going to get shot down? If millions of dollars and hundreds of pounds of cocaine.
Yikes.
Oh yeah, it's a whole thing. So back to your money laundering. For the cartel, this was rampant. So they always had to legitimize their money. Otherwise, it had to just be stuffed in walls and used very sparingly. Money was wired all around and finally landed. So money was wired all around when it landed in the U.S. for legit investing. It's believed that this could be why there was little to no interest in the recovery. So the drugs, the money, and they're like, there was 19 total passengers, which of course that's horrible, but
in
wasn't
comparison
many people.
To like 300, I could see that
Mm.
people are just kind of like, well.
And then the guy, the planes were drug mules. They didn't care. Like they're like, I just whatever. That was lost one, whatever.
Yeah.
So the airline was eventually sold in 1989 for somewhere between $600 and $700 million. And then the whole incident.
Was it rebranded into something else? What is it now?
American Air. No. It is Southwest. No.
It would never be Southwest.
Southwest going to...
It's United.
Yeah, it's for sure United. Delta.
Spirit.
Don't take a Spirit flight. Did you see that thing on
that
Reddit?
We hate. Oh, which one?
There's a video of Reddit. It said, don't take Spirit. And the whole cabin is just like they're in gnarly turbulence. And
it's not their fault.
Well, yeah, but
Ryanair.
It's just, what's that?
It's the European budget airline. It's horrible. But tickets are like 10 euros.
I mean, if you're
to
just
a different country,
if you're just hopping,
yeah. If it's like a 45-minute flight, like sure, I don't.
Well, we took that janky ass propeller plane to Cambodia. Yeah,
Anchor Air. Yeah.
Well, the
Cambodian Anchor Air is what it's called.
Well, it was just that plane. I don't think it was the whole airlines that's bad, but that plane scared me a bit. Just
only like 30 people flying into Siem Reap.
It's like they pulled the cord on a two-stroke motor, and we're like, let's go. It was sketchy.
Yeah, propeller planes are kind of scary.
Yeah, I don't dig them that much. But that was the first time I'd ever been on one. So, okay. Now we're getting to sort of present day. Now this is where it gets super interesting. Over the years, the debris moved, so everything's up there. It's just sitting there, right? So over the years, the debris moved along the glacier and eventually emerged enough that climbers were able to uncover wreckage in 2006.
So it's coming down the mountain?
Yes, so it's the natural progression of glaciers. It's just coming down while new ice is being put up top. So in 2006, people got up there, could find more wreckage. More wreckage was coming up. Also global warming. It's getting hotter, ice is melting more, and as it goes down, it's just everything's kind of coming to the surface. But still, no bodies were found. Though various personal effects of the passengers were recovered, local climbers believed it was only a matter of time before bodies would surface. The flight data recorder, cockpit voice recorder, and all that emerged from the ice. So they're like, something's going to show up. Well, they don't know yet, but they're like, it's coming. Like this is unearthing a little bit. January 4th, 2017, Dan Furtrell and Isaac Stoner were roommates who had been inspired to undertake the search by reading of Flight 980 in the Wikipedia article List of Unrecovered Flight Recorders. So if you want to get into this game, go ahead and check that out.
Let's go.
They met with NTSB investigator Bill English to hand off the recovered components. So whatever they did have.
Wait, these are just two college guys?
No, they're like adults. So Dan is like an ex-Green Beret.
Okay, so they have like military
they're
background.
like active. Yeah, they're like climbers, and they're
so
the
they're
type
not
of
just
guys
like,
who
oh, let's go look up, fly to Bolivia and figure this out.
Yeah, they're so I was reading Dan, and I didn't read much about Isaac's past, but they said like Dan's an ex-army guy, loves physical challenges, like he would do an Iron Man and stuff like that, and he just likes to stay fit. And so what he would do now that he works in an office, he likes to do these random challenges and like physical things to basically just keep testing himself and keep, fitting on your toes. And Isaac, I guess, went with them. So they got the components from Bill English, the NTSB investigator. So they got some components, some coordinates, like just where everything is, and they started to plan it all out. They got approval from the Bolivian General Directorate of Civil Aviation for the NTSB. Yeah, sorry.
How do you even contact that guy?
Yeah, I thought that same thing. So I was reading, I'm like, who's that? Like,
hey, is it okay if we come?
I wonder if you go through
well, that agency, NTSB,
but
probably maybe.
We're through the what do you call it?
The yellow pages?
No, this is definitely the white pages. So they got approval from everybody to proceed, and they were all like, go ahead, whatever. They're paying for it, Dan and Isaac. So the roommates embarked on a 5-month training plan that consisted of running stairs at Harvard football stadium and sleeping in hypoxico altitude simulation tents. I didn't know what that was.
What the heck?
Yeah, so I guess it just
it like
there.
Sucks the oxygen out. That's so scary.
Yeah. I didn't know that was a thing until this. Hypoxico. Their primary search area was not the crash site itself, obviously, but a roughly 1 square mile patch of glacier moraine, 3,000 feet below it. So moraine is just like a rock pile of like ice, and I looked it up. Whatever.
Okay.
I had to say it because I looked it up. So Flight 980 hit a saddle on the south side of Illimani near the top, and for the past 31 years, plane parts had been sliding down the mountain in ice falls, plunging over cliffs, and slowly grinding downhill toward a glacier at the bottom. So the pair, Dan and Isaac, acquired a guide named Robert Rauch. Robert is a German man that has spent the last 20 years living and climbing in Bolivia. And honestly, I couldn't find anything about this guy online. No idea. He obviously is obviously a climber that lived in Bolivia. They also hired a cook who's a cook and a serious climber himself named Jose Lazo. Jose was indigenous to the area and well-versed in the climb. He had done it before. Next thing you know, the roommates found themselves standing in La Paz, Bolivia, already very sick from the altitude.
Okay.
So they got there, met the dudes, and got sick. So then they exactly like everybody else. So they just sort of hung around for a little bit, but they started climbing. So I'm just going to jump. There's a lot about the climb, but it's pretty normal. These guys are really fit with two very, very well-versed climbers. So it's tough.
Let's get to the wreckage.
Yeah, so it's tough, and they get there. All right, so once they reach their target location and start the day one search, they start finding femurs.
Tumors? Oh, God.
Still growing. No, sorry. They start finding femurs, tibias, and a cervical vertebrae with nerves still visible down the spinal column.
Did they like freeze and stuff? Is it like
I think so.
Like mummified? I don't know.
Yeah, I think is encased in
Well,
ice.
there's the people.
So they spend the day scouring the area on their own and coming together only if something was interesting. So they just kind of spread out a little bit, and if somebody's like, hey, check this out, they all like come together, and that's what they did when they found bones and cervical vertebrae. Yeah, so airplane parts were scattered just everywhere, just tiny pieces all over the place. They found the fuselage and one engine. Then they found flight toggles, seatbelts, snake skins, and children's shoes. So there's a ton of, it's kind of random, but tons of snake skins and alligator skins for shoes and clothes, I think.
Was that like poaching, or is that just...
I think it's illegal.
Like illegal?
I think so, but...
In the 80s?
Yeah, there's tons, though. On day 2, so that's what they find, so great. On day 2, they start at a higher position. Soon they're finding wheels, pistons, switches, hydraulics, another engine, life jackets, an oxygen tank, cables, alligator skins, and tangled clusters of wires. So just stuff everywhere. Day 3, the crew start to get more and more obsessed with finding the black box, since the new airplane parts. So the new airplane parts that they're finding... I mean,
this is like the most they've seen from the wreckage. So
yeah,
it sounds like they're getting close.
So day 1 and 2 were very exciting. Finding all these parts were super exciting because no one had seen these in a long time. But, you know, by day 3, they start to lose their... It starts to become redundant, and you're just like, cool, more toggles and plane switches and wires. It's like, yes, we've seen that. Now where's the thing? So after a long exhaustive day and finding, so they found someone's neck with metal embedded into it.
Oh God.
They start digging out they go up to the side and start digging out the steel beam that was right next to it. Sure enough, right next to that beam, they found the cockpit voice recorder and a spool of tape. So, big time find. This is like what they've been looking for.
Yeah.
So, all excited, they pack it up. You know, day 3 days at that height.
They take it home and it doesn't work.
So, they accidentally took it all the way back home to the U.S., violating Annex 13 of the Convention on International Civil Aviation.
Well, was somebody supposed to tell them, hey, if you find it, don't take it home?
You'd think somebody did, or maybe they did the research, but they absolutely didn't.
Because I wouldn't, or they didn't want to give it over to the Bolivian government?
No, so...
Because if... Obviously, I'm not like a military person, so I have no knowledge of how like international law or like other countries' laws work. But if that was me and I found something important, I would definitely take it home. So
what happened is they found it and they're like, no way are we giving this up to the government that has done anything. They're like, there's no way. Not only because they want to be the ones who found it, of course, this is what they're doing. That was the goal, is to find this. But also to find out what happened. So if they gave it to this government, they're not going to do anything with it, and that's not what they were set out to do. So they kind of were like, well, let's just take it home. When they get home, they call their friend to figure out what they have. A friend in aviation in some sort of level of the Marines or something like that, and he goes, you didn't bring it home, did you? Oh, it's like really bad? And they're like, yep. And that's what they... Well, don't tell anybody. They violated Annex 13 of the convention. Did they tell everybody they brought it home? They told him. Okay. So they violated Annex 13 of the Convention of International Civil Aviation. It says that wherever a plane crashes, that country is in charge of the investigation. Moving evidence to a different nation could be seen as undermining that authority and will lead to, you know, arrest or fines or whatever. Well, if the United States wants to send them, it's not the U.S., it's Bolivia. Yeah, but if they're in the United States, Bolivia can't be like, send them here. So they got in touch with the NTSB, let them know what they had. They came clean. They were just like, we have it. Like, what do you want? Mm-hmm. And the NTSB, again, didn't say a whole lot. They took it, researched it, looked at it, worked with the guys. Everything was fine. So on February 7th, 2017, the NTSB released a statement that what had been found was the cockpit voice recorder rack and the flight data recorder pressurized in pressurized container assembly. So it was just the encasing.
What holds it?
Yeah,
but they
what
didn't say that
holds
they
it.
actually had the data from it.
They said there was no data in that casing. So both of which are exterior pieces of the flight recorders that surround the data recording mechanisms in either device but do not hold data themselves. The promising spool of tape that they found, it was 3/4 inch U-matic videotape that when reviewed, was found to contain an 18-minute recording of the 1966 Trial by Treehouse episode of the television series I Spy.
What?
Dubbed in Spanish.
Was that like the TV show that they were playing on the airplane?
Maybe.
Did airplanes in 1980 have TV on it?
I don't know, but...
So they didn't find anything?
They found nothing.
Dang it.
Yes, what a letdown.
Give me something.
When I read that, I was like, no! Like, what the hell? And it's just an 18-minute recording of... It's basically an incomplete episode dubbed in Spanish. Which is just annoying. But the conclusion of the crash. So, with them finding nothing on the spool and it being as messy as it is up there and as difficult as it was to find anything, as difficult as it is to get there, as unhelpful as the Bolivian government's been, this is kind of the conclusion of the crash, according to pretty much everyone. It's just kind of what happened. Flying into La Paz was far more difficult than initially thought, and all that the pilots were required to do to land in La Paz was watch a video, and then on their first time flying in, have a check pilot. So all they were required to do to land this plane in this very difficult area was watch a video and have somebody next to them who had done it before.
Well, as a passenger, I wish I would know that that was their training. Be like, no.
And then it's thought that on this flight, the check pilot wasn't even in the cockpit. He was sitting in the front row out with everybody else.
Okay, so some guy that's never landed there before, and they're just like, have at it.
Yep, pretty much.
And he crashed the plane.
That, along with... I mean, the instruments they were using were just trash. These planes weren't very great, I guess.
I mean, was there any information about the pilots and like how many years of experience they had?
Not
and
a lot.
It was actually this guy's first time flying in there?
There is some information, but it's not a lot. They were seasoned pilots. There was, like seasoned pilots not flying into La Paz, but there was like a fighter pilot. They're pilots, but this is a little bit of a different scenario here. But the instruments they had were trash. It was not working. The systems on board regularly steered pilots miles off course, while the navigation only told pilots where the beacons were, not where the plane actually was in relation to those beacons. So it's like, the beacon's over here, but where are we in relation to where that beacon is? So basically they're flying blind. Navigation is steering them is miles off.
That's like the planes. The beacons, instruments in the planes are wrong.
The instruments in the planes aren't correct. So this is what is thought happened. The systems are off.
Okay, but we don't know because we don't have the black box.
This is regular for these Eastern Airlines.
Oh,
it's just known.
Okay.
Like this is.
Well, geez, that's dangerous.
Well, usually airports have better beacons than look for it. Yeah, I get that. But where is it?
That's why I'm wondering, like, was it foggy? Is it cloudy? Like, you're up in the mountains. You probably can't see, so you're relying on
it was night.
The instruments. Because you can't actually see where
anything.
You're going.
That's a lot of flying. You can't see much.
Yeah, have you seen those windshields?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So, like, their instruments are slightly off, which puts them off course. The grounds team that's trying to get them in were like, yeah, just find the light. Come on in. It's like, but where is the light? So they're just like literally flying blind. And all that, including the language barrier between the pilots and the ground tower, a terrible storm, inexperience, and shit luck, the plane probably fell off course and just simply found its way into the side of the mountain. That's it. So they're just saying like bad instruments, ill communication.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely not the
luck.
first time that's happened.
Yeah.
With flying machines.
Yeah, no. And that's basically this whole article, the couple articles I was reading, it all concluded in like, I think we're just overthinking this.
Yeah, maybe.
So it took me through this whole thing of like drugs and embezzling and hidden bodies.
It sounds like there's going to be a whole story behind it, and then it's like, oh, no, they just crashed it was an accident.
Yeah, it's a... Yeah, and as I kept going, it's just like, it literally, as I was researching this, going like, what am I looking for? I'm looking for something, when it's really just bad instruments. They don't speak the same language. The ground crew's like, whatever. They're at 13,000 feet, high altitude landing. It's night.
It's
bad
just
storm. It's all the things.
Difficult situations combined that just would lead to a crash easily. It sounds like.
Yeah, it was everything that could go wrong pretty much did go wrong. So I did the condensed version of this story, because if I read through every single
theory,
not even theory, but just like every single detail of like what occurred, we'd be here for 4 hours. So what you can do is there's a
website
so Outside Online has a fantastic article about the guys that went up in 2017. He went with them.
Like a journalist went with them and documented everything. Cool.
So he gives a pretty like loose origin story. It's more about them going and what they saw, and it gets into really deep detail and stuff like that. And then on the YouTube channel Barely Sociable, there's a great video about this where he gets into all of the nitty gritty of like the drug smuggling and the first attempts and things like that. But I just thought this story was pretty crazy, and it's still crazy that they only found that limited amount of bones and no bodies, no skulls, no nothing. It said that it was thought that everything just disintegrated. Even
on impact. Yeah. If you said the pieces were like really small, so that makes sense.
Also, it's like you're hitting a mountain at what? At least 200 miles an hour in a giant airplane. You're going to get smashed and pulverized. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's pretty graphic. But that's
At least it was quick.
How terrifying, though. So it did go...
but the people on board probably had no idea until they just like made contact.
Yeah, the article the gentleman wrote for the flight, he's like, was it like... did they just turn on their, or like open their book and get their tea and then boom? Or were they like in a panic and then boom? And like, that's what they want to know. Like, what happened leading up to this? Were the beacons off? Was there bad communication? Was there any communication? What happened?
Yeah. I mean, I get that. But at this point, it's like, it's done. Like, they're gone. It's done. Airline's out of business. Like, we have better planes now in 2020. So we're not, I don't know how much you could learn from that. Besides, it's a dangerous airport, and maybe let's not land there. Let's not.
Yeah. I think we're a little too far gone now.
I mean, back then, yeah, but they weren't even trying very hard, it seems like, to find out, so.
And I think it's just pure negligence from the government. I just think they didn't care.
Yeah.
Like, flat didn't care. So, like, that's why, when you go into all the theories, like, oh, the drug cartel, blah, blah, I just think the government didn't give a shit.
I mean, it is interesting that what you said, the whole international aviation law, how wherever a plane crashes, up to that government's discretion. But what if it's that was an American company? So why can't the American government go in and say, hey, we're going to investigate because this is our?
Yeah, I think they are a part of it, but they're only allowed access to it if the government is with them, or like set up. So that's the story of Eastern Airlines Flight 980 from Paraguay.
Paraguay to
Asuncion,
Miami.
Paraguay to
Miami.
Miami, Florida. Full of cocaine.
Thanks. I don't like it because I don't want to fly now.
Yeah, I'm never flying again. But, yeah, that's it for this week. And we're happy to be back. And this is great.
Yay! Welcome back.
Back in the studio again.
No.
All right. Well,
Good night.
Bye, everybody.